The EBnet conference this year is very much focused on technology. We're talking about a lot of things. We're talking about the metaverse. We're talking about AI in investments. We're talking about enhanced member communication systems in its various forms, administration systems, cybersecurity, a whole range of things. And we also had an interview with Ericsson. Mr. Todd Ashton is the Vice President for Africa, and we talked about the reach into not just the metropolitan areas, but also into the sort of more rural, remote areas, because all of this technology and things and enhancements that we're busy with becomes meaningless if we cannot get them to our furthest members out and that are part of our retirement funds in South Africa. So it's important to have the systems and all the fancy gadgets. It's important then to also have the infrastructure upon which those run. But now, most importantly, is how do we get that in place? And having that infrastructure is very much dependent on putting into effect several ESG tools, and that's why the connection is so important to talk about how that fits into shaping the overall business of getting these delivery right through to the members in the furthest reaches. I'm joined by Thembeka Sobekwa, who's a portfolio manager at MIANZO Asset Management. And we're going to be talking about some of these concepts a little bit. What is ESG? How does it impact? And using some examples as to what's happening currently in that field. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for joining me. So before we jump into the sort of solutions and things that are available, maybe just for those people that are not familiar with the ESG concept, there could be a few out there, although we've spoken about this at many conferences before. But if you'd be so kind just to unpack for us just on a sort of a headline basis, what is ESG all about? What does that mean?
Okay, so ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. So the field of ESG has to do with how, as a community and a society, we are factoring ESG factors into the way that we operate and the way that we do things. And particularly for businesses, it's how the businesses operate, and also for a business such as MIANZO, for how we invest our client funds. And it talks about how we all should be considering these factors in order to build more sustainable future.
Thanks. That was a nice introduction just in terms of background. But practically put that into perspective for us. How do you guys operate in that environment? How do you make that work practically on a day-to-day basis?
So when we look at our investment process, part of it is that we have to assess the macroeconomic environment that businesses operate in order to build an investment case around those businesses. Now, as you know, in South Africa, we've had things like persistent GDP and high unemployment, and more recently, we've seen rising interest rates and inflation. So it's a constrained macro environment, and that's led a lot of businesses having to innovate and relook at their business model in order to stay in business for the foreseeable future. So the main innovations we have been seeing have been around technology, and have been centered around the supply chains, optimizing their businesses, as well as access to customers. How do they get their products and services to their customers? So this is brought on a need for wide-scale, accessible broadband internet that is cost-effective in society. So when we look at a business, we look at part of the ESG would be on the social factors. So if a company is rolling out a digital innovation which speaks to customers digitally accessing their goods, on a social point of view, we would look at customer or social suitability as well as social access. So does that digital access to your product exclude a certain part of society, or is it inclusive of society? So to give you an example, we saw during COVID, insurance companies were hit with record funeral and life cover claims. And so many of them introduced digital claims channels to invest in digitally enabling their agents so that they can reach their customers to process their claims. But this doesn't work if the customers themselves don't have access to internet. So they had to also invest on the other side, where the customers themselves have access to the digital means, to have access to the internet. So this digital innovation is really something that is a potential source for growth for the companies, but we then assess if it's a sustainable practice. So what we deem as an unsustainable practice would, just to tie it up with that product access, is something that is not accessible to a bulk of society. And this is a drive towards creating a more inclusive society and making sure that everyone has access to the same products and services.
Fair enough, that makes sense. Right, so I understand that. I think, obviously connectivity and being able to reach out to the furthest bits of all our communities is crucially important. And there's different ways of doing that. There's different platforms. If you can maybe give us an example of what those are, and then some specific examples of companies that are doing that exactly. Yeah.
Yes, you're very right. It's very crucial because what the access does, it affords the customer base to fully participate in a digital society. So businesses are very aware of this need. And what we are seeing is that historically there had been customers have been using phones as internet access, but as the number of applications is increasing, mobile access is just not sufficient anymore. So the development into the demand for fiber connectivity is growing and is something that is largely focused in the township and rural community. And there are many players that are emerging in that space. Just to name some of the players that are emerging in that space, Vumatel's Vuma. They launched uncapped fiber in the townships in 2018 already. And they've also built public Wi-Fi hotspots. They offer free internet connectivity in things like your local centers or malls, and in things like your clinics. And also they ran a survey last year. It's a Vuma 2021 Fiber Reach survey. And in that survey, they showed that more homes are actually upgrading to fiber internet. So they're moving away from using their phones and they're moving towards more fixed line fiber internet network. And now the need is growing so fast that, fiber does require the actual infrastructure of laying down the cables. The guys come and dig, and then they put the lines and all. It's actually proving to be too slow. They're rolling up too slow in the communities. That there's also emerged another player in the field, which is to address areas that have serious infrastructure challenges, and that's something like MTN Supersonic. Supersonic launched air fiber as an alternative to traditional fiber, and they launched last year in 2021. So they're focused on rolling out high-speed, reliable access to the internet, and they were able to reach 3.1 million homes in just 1 year. That's an unbelievable penetration just in just 1 year. And then there's also another player called Ikeja, and they also do the same. They own and build wireless infrastructure in the township, and they also operate hotspots in communities they operate in. And they're operating in 38 townships right now in Western Cape and Gauteng, looking to expand into KZN as well as the Eastern Cape. So there's a number of players that are coming up in the space, but the need is just so wide and vast. It's something that I definitely don't see one player dominating and being able to satisfy the need. There's going to be a couple of players that are emerging, and the good thing is it is happening and it is being rolled out.
That's brilliant news. I'm extremely encouraged by that, and I think it validates exactly what we're saying here, that we need to be able to reach out with all these different technologies and solutions to every single person, every single member that are part of our schemes. And it's really encouraging to hear that these things are rapidly moving. So brilliant, excellent.
Yeah. So the key there is that we want them to access a bulk of the customer base. Without reaching scale, then you render whatever innovation that you're rolling out ineffective. So you do need to reach as many people as you can, as quick as possible.
Well, look, that's great news. I love what I'm hearing. And it's also not just about big business. I think it also goes much, much further than that. If you can give us a couple of examples of what's happening in that field.
Yes, so the digital access is actually there for the benefit of the emerging now township economy. So what we're seeing is that entrepreneurs and SMMEs as well operating in the township are using this to run their businesses. And also people are using it to access alternative forms of income. Just last year, there was a pop-up cinema that was bringing entertainment to the community of Kailicha, and that was powered by Vuma. Also, another field is that it's also bringing digital literacy to township schools. Curo launched Curo Academy Schools, and it focuses on bringing high quality, affordable education to townships. And part of that is that it relies on using tablets and phones to deliver the curriculum. So the drive to increase the digital access in the townships is not just a big opportunity just for economic growth, but also is a step towards creating more inclusive society and reducing that digital gap.
Brilliant. Thembeka, that was very interesting, and it's been a delight speaking to you. I've certainly learned a lot, and I really look forward to chatting to you guys about this more in the future. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Take care.